Now, keep in mind, Senate Democrats likely had the 60 votes they needed back then to overcome a filibuster. There were at least 3 Republicans who supported Roe. Democrats held between 59 and 60 Senate seats during the first 2 years of Obama's first term. We'll talk about the numbers in a minute. But the Democrats were lulled into complacency. They had the Supreme Court on their side. They were still wounded, if victorious, from the bruising passage of Obamacare. And again, the majority of Democrats would not have had the will to pass anything as expansive as the Freedom of Choice Act. So for the Democrats, it was all or nothing. And they got nothing. So after passing up the chance to actually do it, now top Democrats, hoping to harness the outrage from their base, are reviving the call to federally enshrine access to abortion and warning of the potential for Republicans to enact a nationwide ban on it.
Congress is going to have to act to codify the Roe into federal law. As I said yesterday, the filibuster should not stand in the way of us being able to do them. So the choice is clear. We either elect federal senators and representatives who will codify Roe, or Republicans who will elect the House and Senate who will try to ban abortions nationwide. Nationwide. This is going to go one way or the other after November.
Now, let's be clear. Currently, Democrats don't have the votes, right? And also, to be clear, even if Republicans win majorities in both the House and the Senate in the fall, and even if every Republican voted to enact a national ban on abortion, which seems very unlikely, President Biden would still have veto power. And it's very unlikely Republicans would have the 2/3 majority to override that veto. So no, it's not an immediate threat, but it's a legitimate issue to discuss. But not without asking why the Democrats didn't do something when they had the chance. Now President Biden is seemingly calling for suspending the Senate filibuster rule so Democrats can get a pro-choice federal statute on the books. But Democratic Senators Joe Manchin, West Virginia, Senator Kyrsten Sinema, Arizona have said they would block any effort to suspend the Senate filibuster. Which brings us right back to the initial question of why Democrats didn't do it when they had the chance. Joining me now is John McCormack, Washington correspondent for National Review, a fellow at the National Review Institute, and he recently wrote a piece entitled, "Why Didn't Democrats Codify Roe When They Had the Chance?" John, welcome to the show. Thanks very much for taking the time. Appreciate it. All right, so take us through why Democrats exactly didn't do it when they had the chance from your perspective.
Well, the first big push to really pass the Freedom of Choice Act was back in 1993, after Democrats swept to power with huge majorities in both the House and the Senate, and they had the White House with President Clinton. Now, at that point, you go back and you read the contemporaneous coverage, and it was pretty straightforward that, there were pro-choice Republicans, pro-choice Democrats who said, listen, if this is an open amendment process, meaning that people could add amendments saying, for example, there could be 24 waiting periods before an abortion is performed, parental consent notice is allowed in certain states, and that late-term abortion limit is defined, or I don't know where exactly they would have wanted the limit set. It seemed pretty clear at the time that there was majority support to get some federal right to abortion enacted in law. But pro-choice advocates, both in Congress and outside of Congress, were worried that that open amendment process would result in a right to abortion that was not as expansive as they wanted, perhaps less expansive than Roe is itself. So it never even came to the floor for a vote. It did pass a committee in the Senate, but it was never put up for a vote for the full Senate or the House.
But some have said that the Democrats didn't have the votes, right? Some have said, well, if you actually look back at it, they didn't have the 60. There were a few Democrats who wouldn't have voted for it. What do you make of that argument?
I think that was not true back then because the filibuster wasn't as commonly used in the early 90s. Recall that the assault weapons ban passed. There was no filibuster of that. And I think also if you look back to when Obama took office, with 59 or 60 senators who were Democrats, I think it's pretty clear that there were 60 senators for a federal right to abortion. You can count, 3 arguably pro-life Democrats: Bob Casey Jr. of Pennsylvania, Ben Nelson of Nebraska, and Mark Pryor of Arkansas. But Pryor said he was somewhere in the middle on abortion. Bob Casey Jr., he now supports this expansive bill codifying federal right to abortion. So I do think with the help of a few pro-Roe Republicans, 2 from Maine, 1 from Alaska, that you could have gotten to 60 there. And then the House, they also passed legislation that was supportive of a right to abortion. For example, the House passed a bill providing Medicaid funding of elective abortion in the District of Columbia. That, to me, is a pretty strong indication that if they had really put a lot of effort into it, they could have gotten something. But that same dynamic, I think, was at play, where the activists weren't going to be happy with whatever they could get. There were 6 justices at the time who were supportive of Roe, and it would have been a big political hit for Democrats to have had that debate. There was a big chunk of the party at the time that described itself as pro-life, and even if they voted against it, that fight could have been badly damaging to them.
John McCormack, thank you very much for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.